Welcome. This is Smart 24 TV, driving business. My name is Joram Paul Sonko and welcome to Business Today. I'm coming to you live from Plot 42, Nile Avenue. It is the 16th day of June 2022. All right, now let's have a look at the top stories that we have for you tonight.
Fast track the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, Uganda is hosting the SDG conference at Kampala Serena Hotel. But what is Uganda's strategy on achieving a higher score on the SDG?
The major purpose of any innovation is to solve a problem. But the question is that problem painful? Only when it's painful, that innovation will be sustainable.
The Ministry of Energy received 2 sets of budget allocation. The 904 billion that is made for the commercialization of oil and gas, and the 1.5 billion that is made for mineral development and other energy-related developments. The empirical evidence on the effect of public debt on the economic growth of Uganda remains ambiguous.
All right, now let's get right onto it. As a means of accelerating the implementation of the new roadmap on the Sustainable Development Goals, building a strong leadership and popularizing the SDGs, the government of Uganda is taking tough action. The Office of the Prime Minister has been reviewing the progress of SDGs in an annual conference under the theme Building Effective Models to Accelerate the SDGs in the Post-COVID Era. Let's have a look at the details regarding the Uganda Annual SDG Conference as Naomi Mutumba reports.
Quest to fast-track the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, Uganda is hosting the SDG conference at Kampala Serena Hotel. But what is Uganda's strategy on achieving a higher score on the SDGs? The road for SDGs started in 2015, where 17 goals were set out with particular focus on the most vulnerable. One key focus is ending poverty, and statistics indicate a reduction in the poverty levels at 21.4% in 2020 and 20.3% by 2021.
Of national address by His Excellency the President, and in the budget speech you all heard, Uganda has attained the lower middle income status with a GDP per capita of US dollars 1,046. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister, this is slightly higher than the entrance points for the lower middle income status of US dollars 1,036. But while we can celebrate this achievement, it is also important and of course requires us to work harder and sustain the current level of GDP per capita and ensure that we impact people's livelihoods across the country.
After this, we shall go to the lower levels of the districts and the sub-counties as agreed with the colleagues, the leaders at the regional level. Ladies and gentlemen, the successful implementation of Agenda 2030 requires an integrated approach, partnership, participation through inclusive political processes and responsiveness, effective accountability institutions. It will require various stakeholders to identify solutions for planning, budgeting, implementation, and monitoring towards achieving the SDGs, as well as tracking where and how funds are spent to curb corruption and assess the impact of these initiatives on the lives of the people, especially the women and the marginalized and disadvantaged groups.
To refocus our attention to build resilience of the economy, because COVID showed us that, look, if the economy is not resilient enough, then you will have a very serious implications. But at least for Uganda, there are certain aspects that the sectors which were not really terribly affected and so on. So the issue now that we look at is the resilience building of the economy to try to reduce on the import dependence. Because if you are more self-reliant, then this issue of Ukraine, Russia, and so on, the supply shortages and so on will not come in. So that most of these programs are also taken care of in the plan.
Specific investment or onward learning or business or trade, and policies and enablers are not in place, it's going to have a challenge. However, for us as private sector foundation especially, we've had very, very engaging discussions with government, and some of the interventions we've had, and I'll give examples here, are, for instance, we've started something called the Young Africa Works. We have over 75% of our population which is young, under the age of 35, and in this program we are engaging young people with skills, especially financial skills, to enable them make meaningful business so that they can have a return on investment and then avoid unemployment.
All right, that's Naomi Mutumba. Now, moving on, we head to the energy sector. In the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development budget for the financial year 2022-2023, government intends to spend a separate 904 billion shillings on the commercialization of oil. Another 1.5 trillion shillings will be available for development of other energy resources. Let's have the details.
The long-awaited move could spark the economic activities dire fly in the oil sector as the country grapples with high fuel prices from the supply shocks occasioned by the Ukraine and Russia standoff. Part of the money will help in the operationalization of the construction of the oil pipeline project that Uganda sealed with Tanzania in the final investment decision agreement signed with Tanzania's Suluhu Hassan. The country expects to out its first drop of oil in 2025. Experts have been calling on government to make the oil investment decision sustainable and responsibly to benefit the nation.
Construction of the East African crude oil pipeline is expected to commence the coming financial year. The capacity of the Uganda National Oil Company to invest in oil and gas development has also been enhanced. While there have been negative campaigns against the development of the crude oil pipeline, the government will develop Uganda's oil.
The ministry must therefore set its priorities clear as the new financial year begins in a couple of days.
It is in the oil and gas sector, in the area of commercializing the oil, because remember that we've spent the last 15 years doing exploration, licensing, doing the production sharing agreements, and all related legislation. Now all that is done. Early this year we had our international companies doing the FID, final investment decision. They announced how much they're investing in the sector. There is a lot of engineering, procurements and construction going on. We are looking towards commercializing the product.
Muita says national electricity access today stands at 57%, of which 19% is on the main national grid, while the 38% is off-grid. This includes the solar power. Uganda's total electricity generation capacity has increased from 1,268 megawatts in the financial year of 2019-2020 to 1,347 megawatts in the financial year 2021-2022.
Now on the grid we are at about 19%. It came down from 11 to 19% over the years. But now we got some funding from the World Bank. $600 million is coming in at the beginning to increase the connection coverage to 30% of the 30% Ugandans to be connected to power. So what has been slowing down the connections is really an issue of resources. You require about 700,000 to connect to one household.
The Ministry of Energy received two sets of budget allocation. The 904 billion that is made for the commercialization of oil and gas, and the 1.5 billion that is meant for mineral development and other energy-related developments. This, of course, is going to boost the energy sector as they have been looking for funding to implement some of their activities. Rona Nahabwe, Smart 24 TV.
Rona Nahabwe. Now, away from that, let's speak innovations, as experts have warned that there is great need to devise means for sustaining local innovations and disseminating them to solve problems in society. Uganda must also develop faith on own innovations in ICT sector, since less reliability of the local innovations has been a major factor affecting sustainability for the local innovations. Let's have the details to this report.
A variety of innovations have emerged in the country due to the rising global digital transition. Many institutions have engaged in equipping students with information and technology skills so as to solve the major challenges in their communities, albeit unsuccessfully.
Sustainability means about doing something today that will preserve or will protect things so that the future will find them. But also what you're doing now should be gainful for people around you. So sustainability pushes out things like selfishness, things like greed, such things. So when young people are creating these innovations, usually I tell them, look out on how is someone in the community who is not directly into tourism benefiting from what you're doing.
Well, local innovators have to be very creative because we all know that the world changes very fast and technology also changes every now and then. So if you're not creative, you won't be able to be, you won't have a sustainable innovation. So one has to be very creative, look at the trends, look at how the technology world is changing, and then come up with better ways or better ideas better ideas in order to be able to sustain their innovative ideas. For example, let's say when you've developed an e-learning platform, let's say you've developed it during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was supposed to service or to work during that period of time. When that period passes, you have to be creative enough to know that times are changing and this innovation may no longer be sustainable. So you have to think of ways of changing the model, the business model, so that it can continue running and operating the way it should, and it doesn't die off. Most innovations usually die off because people don't think of better ways of making it stay online, making it service the problem that it's trying to solve. Or once a problem is solved, somebody thinks it's now over. But you have to think of ways of making sure that your innovation stays relevant.
Despite the current circumstances, there are local innovations that have found their way to the market. Some of these have been successfully incubated to commercialization. A good example, Safe Border, Yoza, Run for Life, Mambo Pay, Clinic Master, Jaguza, to mention but a few. Countries such as USA, Canada, Europe or Asia have encouraged innovations and research as driving factors for their economies. Bariji Andrew, Smart 24.
Bariji Andrew. Now, away from that, let's speak the parish development model, whose implementation takes center stage in the next financial year starting 1st July 2022. The local government state minister, Victoria Businje Rusoke, says that the public should embrace government development programs to fight poverty. This comes in a time when the government is planning to implement the parish development model. Rusoke says government has prepared enough programs that the public ought to implement. Let's have the details.
Ahead of the implementation of the parish development model, the Uganda Bureau of Statistics is set to collect household data and is training personnel to implement the same. The parish development model is the last mile strategy for service delivery by Government of Uganda for improving incomes and the welfare of all Ugandans at the household level. It is a 7-pillar model with production, storage, processing and marketing, infrastructure, economic services, financial inclusion, social services, mindset change, parish-based management information system, governance and administration, for its success.
This training and train the parish level officials who are going to collect the data for the PDM baseline data collection exercise. Now this baseline data collection exercise is supposed to form a platform for tracking implementation of the different strategic objectives and interventions that we have in our NDP3.
Data will be pivotal in the successful implementation of the model.
The Parish Development Model Management Information System, the Ministry of ICT is working together with Uganda Bureau of Statistics in implementing this or coordinating this. So we are training, and so this is a TOT, let me say it's a training of trainers. These trainers are now going to become also trainers. They are going to train at district level. After training at district level, the data will be collected, so they will become district supervisors at that point.
The Fort Portal RCC, Mr. Angalia Kasigwa Godwin, said that 3.5 million Ugandans are living a subsistence lifestyle and need help.
In meditation, it is that money to remain within that circle so that other people can benefit from it. As for instance, the Myoga program, this is a program which has free entry and exit. So it's not good for a defaulter or any beneficiary come, get our money and go away. We shall hunt you, we shall look for you. We need that money to help other people. As a country, we are battling with 3.5 million people who are still in subsistence life.
Barija Andrew, Kajumba Goretti, Smart 24.
Just a quick one. We are streaming live on YouTube, Smart 24 TV. Please do remember to subscribe. Okay, now switching off to the public debt. The empirical evidence of the effect of public debt on the economic growth of Uganda remains ambiguous. Generally, a government debt as a percent of the gross domestic product is used by investors to measure a country's ability to make future payments on its debts, thus affecting the country borrowing costs and government bond yield. The details to this report.
Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Matia Kasaija, read the 2022-2023 National Long-Awaited Budget by citizens. Moments after his presentation, individuals, organizations and groups started analyzing the budget, giving their own opinions, and among these was KPMG, a global network of professional firms providing audits, taxes and advisory services, who shared their insights about the national budget. The experts commended the Ministry of Finance for not introducing new taxes, as these would exploit Ugandans. However, Dr. Fred K. Muhumuza, an economist and lecturer at Makerere University, warns Ugandans not to celebrate over this.
Export ratio, and as depreciation goes through, we are watching that closely with the central bank, because the argument is if the shilling depreciates, then you are going to need more shillings to buy the same dollar to go and pay the donors, and then you might deplete your reserves. That's the point the president was making when they said, can't we reduce some taxes, can't we subsidize? He said you will be doing hemorrhage on our reserves. Our reserves are just about 4.5 months of imports. We measure them by the months of imports, how much they can support. So 4.5 months of imports is not something that big. And I've had conversations on coffee, people saying coffee is a brilliant thing. Coffee can only support our imports for 1 month.
The experts are worried about the interest rates on Uganda's foreign debt burden and caution citizens to be cautious about the amended tax procedures as it could lead to penalties. Peter Shambade is not certain whether government will meet the set taxes on local collections and queried Uganda's mid-term economic status.
23.754 will be from tax revenue. The outturn expected, according to the minister, for the year 21-22 is 21.4 trillion, which means there's going to be an increment in revenue expected by 10.5% this year. Revenue for this year that is ending 30th June it is anticipated that there's going to be a deficit of 939.
The issue of escalating prices on essential commodities was among the debated subjects by the experts. However, they attributed this to poor policies. Samuel Kilimunda, Smart 24, Business Today.
All right, now, in continuation of our banking report yesterday, this particular one takes us to Bank Fraud, as Uganda loses a huge amount of money in the banking system fraud, according to the recent report. The Executive Director, Equity Bank Uganda, Sir Anthony Chituka, says there are so many areas of fraud in the different departments. However, he came out to reveal that this can be prevented. Samuel Chirimunda reports that $1 million is lost in banks annually in Uganda. The report.
All banks have processes and procedures. Some are guided by regulation from the regulator, Central Bank, Bank of Uganda. Others are guided by just their group policies and structure. Others are guided by international practice. Security, obviously, depending on the area, you have put appropriate controls. I mean, some controls are digital, some controls are physical. Others are just in terms of process and procedure and control of people, access, and things like that. I mean, as a bank, obviously, we try to ensure we have the best-in-class, world-class security protection around our digital processes, our computerized processes. We have best-in-class physical security. We have a full security department. We have a full compliance department, which tries to address those things. Of course, fraudsters are fraudsters. They are always creative, and you must always keep abreast of what's going on globally, not just what's happening in Uganda, but what's happening in the region and in the world. So you can either anticipate, as our purposes just to react, we have to anticipate and put in controls in place to first, at best prevent, at worst minimize the impact of any fraud.
Okay, now let's get into the absence of new taxes, as the financial and tax experts are warning Ugandans against celebrating the new budget despite the absence of new taxes. To this one, professional auditors and experts on tax and advisory services from KPMG International are reviewing the 48 trillion shilling budget allocations for the 2022-2023 financial year.
Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Matiaka Saija, read the 2022-2023 national long-awaited budget by citizens. Moments after his presentation, individuals, organizations and groups started analyzing the budget, giving their own opinions, and among these was KPMG, a global network of professional firms providing audits, taxes, and advisory services, who shared their insights about the national budget. The experts commended the Ministry of Finance for not introducing new taxes, as these would exploit Ugandans. However, Dr.
All right, our apologies for that particular report, but after the break, we do continue with the issue to do with taxation and the new taxes and the national budget. Stick around with me. This is Business Today, and I'm Joran Paul Sonko.